Thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to you
for the amazing introduction. So
Yes.
like Kyle said, I've known Kyle for a long time now, and his wife is my rock at my office. I couldn't do most things I there without her. So I owe a lot to them as well for that reason. They offer a lot of stability in my life when it comes to certain things. So thank you for the invitation, for being here. So like you said, though, this is going to be more of a conversation. So I have my little list of stuff that I'm going to kind of discuss. The idea is, though, you guys need to ask questions, right? Because, I mean, I can sit here and go through my little spiel and be done in probably a couple minutes, but each item is kind of important. And then also any questions you guys have, I'm more than happy to kind of discuss and figure out. So I'll just kind of tell you who I am and kind of how I got into what I do, and then kind of go through what it is I think that's important when it comes to investing and money management in general, and kind of ways to start and kind of the base of that pyramid. And then we'll go from there. So I have my own bio because, frankly, I forget my own stuff half the time. So let's see here. Okay, so grew up in Lake Forest. I was telling Kellen earlier. I almost said Keelan. Telling Kellen earlier. He actually lives in my neighborhood, by the way.
Does this help if I kind of...
It does, yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
I moved to...
Grew up born and raised in Lake Forest, and then went to El Toro High School, so I'm a local boy. Went to UC Irvine shortly after that, and then I was going to be either a professor or an attorney, and thank you, Lord, that I didn't do either. While I was working at college, I started working at Doctors Investments, just kind of part-time, doing really paper pushing, marketing, stuff like that, and then kind of fell in love with the business as a whole, which is more real estate investment based. Shortly after starting there, I went and got my real estate sales license, because you need that in order to do kind of what we do, which is private equity lending or private money loans, that kind of stuff. And shortly after that, I went and got my broker's license. A couple years after that, NMLS, and then bought into the company around 2019 or so. That's when I became a partner, vice president. At this point, I've probably placed over close to $1 billion in private funds into different types of investment vehicles. 2020, I got Irvine's 40 under 40. 2021, I think it was Brittany is when she got it. Mm-hmm. And then I'm married, my beautiful wife and 2 kids, Wyatt and Charlotte, 2 and 5. Been with my wife since we were 14. We've been dating since I was a freshman, she was a sophomore in high school. So,
What year were you at El Toro High?
I was there. I graduated in 07, so probably
In
02,
07.
03, yeah.
Okay, cool. We lived 5 doors down from El Toro High when he was 3.
Yeah.
4 years old. He was born while we lived there.
While you're over there?
On Toledo?
Yeah, on Toledo.
Yeah, so I lived on the gym side across the street in Campo Rojo, Costbella area.
Okay, cool.
Right over there. So it's always a small world.
Yeah.
Now you live near me.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. Okay, so that's kind of who I am. So I was going to be, like I said, a professor or history teacher, lawyer. I was not in finance. Didn't like math. I thought it was stupid and it was annoying. Like that was my stance on it, and you couldn't have told me anything else. It wasn't until I started kind of working into it professionally that I started realizing, okay, there's actual value to this, right? And that was the part that I think kind of grabbed me, because it was the daily use of it that I always thought, quote unquote, math was dumb, because I'm not going to figure. You ever use an X in real life? Why would I need to figure this out now? It's something far greater than that, though, and in my opinion is far more common sense than it is actual anything you need to learn. It's more or less what makes sense for you personally, and that's, I think, where the biggest question of investing comes from is, how does it fit into your life? Because you're going to be different than you. You're going to be different than him. You're going to be different, than everyone. And so it's, how does it make sense for you, and how do you do this comfortably without actually putting yourself too far out or looking at Phil and saying, how do I get to that point in life? Like, you shouldn't compare yourself to other people. And so that's where I'll kind of start from the beginning. So the 2 main aspects, though, that I always tell people when I'm discussing these kinds of things is, bring up my notes here so I don't sound like a crazy person. 2 main goals: time and diversification. If you leave here tonight with 2 different ideas in general, it's time and diversification. Time is your greatest ally when it comes to investing, period. The sooner you start, the sooner you will be a happy camper later in life, simply due to the rule of compounding interest. And it's something that very few people talk about. There are no classes about it in high school. I don't know why. There's classes about everything else you don't need to know. But when it comes to what is an escrow, how do you deal with buying a house, how do you deal with all the things that you do actually need to know, no one ever talks about that. And that's kind of why I'm frankly doing this tonight, is because him and I were kind of discussing it briefly. And I grew up in a household with 0 money. I grew up in a household where there was no financial education, where I was going to go into teaching because I knew I enjoyed kind of the things that I enjoyed, but I guess to me it was a clear, easy path, right? It was safe, it was stable, I'm gonna go be a teacher, I'm gonna move on, and that's what I'm gonna do in life. I'm gonna go be an attorney because life tells you you need to go to college, and you need to figure out what you wanna do, and then you stick with your career and do it. When I started working at Valcris and I started understanding the idea of money and the idea of compounding interest and all that good stuff, it kind of gave me a new outlook on it. And it was stuff that no one had ever talked to me about. No one had ever said, hey, the younger you start, the better. My brother was sort of into the stock market, but nothing much more beyond that, and I would kind of dabble here and there. There wasn't really anything to it. So I started kind of researching more and more, and I realized that time and diversification were really the two main factors that if everyone learned from the beginning, I think everyone would be better off, because the two things, I mean, really dwindle down to starting as soon as you can, putting $20 here, $50 there, $100 here, whatever it is, but then also splitting that amongst different things, so you're not just in Dogecoin or Tesla, whatever it is, right? The idea to say, okay, my factor, because like, and me personally, and the way I talk about it is I break my investments into percentages. And so I'll say, okay, X amount is going into real estate, X amount is going into the stock market. Within the stock market, I break it down between index funds, which I'll get into later, and then individual stocks, and then from there you can kind of get into different all sorts of different debt or asset type situations when it comes to crypto or other quite strange things that you can sort of find. So couple things to think about. I guess any questions or stuff for me to start, because I feel like I'm speed talking here. Any other questions going on so far?
What was your undergrad major?
History.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry, I should have said that. Yeah. Not math based, never. No math.
Right.
That was a main factor. I know I was going to do business, and then I just didn't want to deal with it. So did history, way more writing than I thought, but
True.
turns out I was decent at writing, so I was okay with that. But yeah, good question. Yeah.
Do you, when you're talking about like diversifying your portfolio, do you include like owning properties and like running different properties too?
Yes.
And that, okay.
Yes, in a sense. I mean, obviously, you can't just throw a property on your balance sheet and say I'm diversified, right? Like most of the time, that is the main asset everyone's trying to buy first. Now, you can do it in pieces, though. You don't need to say my goal is to buy a house right now, and that's how I'm gonna do this. You can there's a million different ways you can do it when it comes to buying pieces of real estate, whether it's essentially buying fractional pieces of kind of what I do, which for a living, which is the trustee piece, which I can get into, or there's all sorts of different like REITs or other things that don't have certain ceilings or floors, I should say, to get into whatever asset class you're trying to buy into. So there's different things you can kind of buy into slowly and to slowly kind of build up your portfolio amongst different things. And then also there's ETFs and stocks that you can essentially buy that follow real estate trends and different market type stuff also. So there is that option if you want to get into real estate based type investing without having to go purchase a house type situation.
Did you start in real estate, or where did you start?
Yeah. So I started at Valcris. That was my first main job when I was doing there, but it wasn't anything to do with what I'm doing now. It was simply based on just really needing a job to pay for college.
So for like as far as like investment goes, where did you start investing? Was it also real estate?
No, first investing was probably stock market based because it's the easiest way to get in, right? The easiest way to start to build something, and that's what I tell people to start with. I always say open up some sort of money market account, whether it's with your bank, Charles Schwab, whatever it is, and then from there you can slowly start putting in little pieces. With the idea in your head, that money's gone. You never invest in anything you can't lose, but also you never invest in something you're going to need later. That's the way I look at it. I'm not going to invest money that I need to use in 6 months or that I need to use in 12 months. Now, if you're someone trying to buy a house soon, you got to take that into account and say, okay, I'm going to buy a house in the next 3 years. 3 years is a long runway. You can use that to build that money for whatever reason, especially in weird times right now where they have higher interest rate savings accounts that they didn't have a couple of years ago. I mean, a couple of years ago, you're looking at savings accounts at 0.5%. You're going to lose money to inflation regardless, whether or not it's in the market or if it's in your pocket. So people are storing cash. But right now, if you're trying to save a little bit of money here and there, you guys are kind of in a good spot because before you couldn't get 5% on your money sitting in an account. Now you can. You can open up a CD. You can open up these, was it Apple, I think, the other day, just opened up. If you have an Apple credit card, you can get 4.15% on your money, I think it is right now, for just putting your money into one of their savings accounts, which is shockingly high. Because that was unheard of a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically starting in the market, in my opinion, is the easiest way to start because you can start in smaller increments. Now with those, you're gonna have to start in individual stocks, so you're gonna have to kind of train yourself to diversify it properly because when you're buying individual stocks, you don't want to put, like I said, all your eggs in one basket, but you can't really buy an index fund yet because index funds usually have a floor of $3,000 at one time, and then from there you can put in whatever you want. ETFs are kind of like an index fund, except ETFs you can trade like a stock daily throughout the day, versus index funds you trade at the end of the day is what the amount you're looking at. But ETFs, I don't believe they have such a high floor ceiling or a floor to get into that actual asset itself. Did that answer the question?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
If I keep talking, just
I'm gonna be honest. Like I'm a novice when it
then
comes to this
slow
kind
me
of
down
thing.
and tell me
Sounds like I forgot what
that's
my
why.
question was.
So, yeah, I'm trying to like, where's a good starting point?
Yeah. Okay, good. Starting point. Stock market is my opinion for a good
Good to
starting
know.
point. Yeah. Couple things here. So I like to show people, if I'm talking about this stuff, kind of the idea, because I'm a very much a results-based person. I like to see the results in order to know why I'm doing something, right? If I'm going to lose weight, I need to see myself losing weight. Otherwise, I'm just going to go eat Twinkies because I think it's pointless. Like, I like to see results, right? So the idea being here is, number one is the rule of 72. So basically take any number, take the number and the rate of return, and you divide it by 10. So like a $100,000 investment or wait, what is there? I had a note little here. So $100,000 at 10%. So you take the 10% divided by 72. It's going to take 7.2 years to double your investment. So that's the rule of 72. So
repeat that one more time. A
So
little slower.
basically, you divide the rate by the year. Or sorry, I'm confusing myself now. It's estimate the number of years it takes to double an investment is by dividing 72 by the annual rate of return.
Gotcha. Okay.
So if you're getting 7% on your money, you divide the 7% divided by 72, whatever that number is, that's how long it'll take to double your money at that interest rate. So I use the example, for instance, if you have $100,000 invested at 10%, it's going to take you 7.2 years in order to get to $200,000. So the reason I say this though is because if you think in your mind, okay, I'm investing my money right now, and you know the 40-year average return on the stock market is roughly 7%, you can assume that 7% is going to be your return by putting money into the market on average. There's going to be ups and downs, but long term it's going to be 7%. So keep that in mind and say, okay, and that way, and you know what your end goal is, and to me that helps me kind of plan and understand why I'm doing this and what I'm doing it for.
Okay.
So is that when you say like you're putting it in the market, is this like the same thing as a money market account that you were mentioning earlier?
No, I mean, you can do money market accounts, but the rate's going to be typically lower. I mean, for me, I like to buy individual stocks in a certain percentage of my portfolio itself. But like for you guys, if you have, say you have a couple $100 you want to invest, right? You're going to put it into something that probably like one stock at a time. So you'll say, okay, I'm going to buy $300 worth of Tesla. And then the next time you put money in, I'm going to buy $300 worth of Ford. Stick with blue chips. Blue chips are like your safety stocks, the ones that have been around forever for the most part. Mm-hmm. Once you get to a certain amount and you say, okay, I have $3,000, from there you can determine whether or not you want to kind of liquidate and then put it into an index fund. Index fund, depending on the one you buy, is going to track and do the diversification for you. So if you buy one share, quote unquote share of an index fund, say it's $100, which like the Vanguard Total Stock Index is I think it's $100 a share right now roughly. That follows the top, I think 500 or 2,000 companies, whatever one, on the market. So buying that piece, you're essentially buying pieces of all 500 or 2,000 companies, whatever one it tracks. Mm-hmm. So doing so gives you the ability to purchase that, and then that will essentially follow the market for you, so that you don't need to further diversify yourself. All that to say, I would just stick with the stock market in the beginning until you at least start to build something, if you want to get into the market. Otherwise, like I said, the idea that you can get 5% on your money right now with zero risk whatsoever, I think is also pretty sweet. So that's probably a good place to start as well. Are you familiar with a CD?
No.
Okay, so a CD is when you can, if you go to like banks or you go to like Ally Bank or Citibank, some of these other big banks, or even a lot of these online banks now, there's something called the CD. A CD will lock up your money for a certain period of time, a predetermined certain period of time, and there's a penalty if you withdraw it early. And the idea is you're basically telling the bank, okay, I'm going to give you $1,000 for 18 months, and on that, and they'll say, okay, in 18 months we're going to give you 5.5 or 6% on that money. And at the end of 18 months, you can take your money out. Now, if you withdraw that money before the 18 months, you're going to get penalized on it. Right. So the idea is you don't want to take it out. It does a couple things. It forces you to save, because you can't touch that money because it's not liquid. But also then the bank knows that they have essentially guaranteed funds for them to go run and invest and do their own thing. So it works kind of for both parties. That's a good way to start because it forces you to not touch the money. And I don't know if there's a limit or a floor on CDs for the most part. I'm pretty
What
sure.
does CD stand for?
Certificate deposit? Yeah, certificate deposit.
Certificate deposit.
Yeah, and it's funny. They've been around forever. I don't even know when they started. They've been around as long as I've been alive. But they were never like the sexy way to invest because in the low rate market we were in the last couple of years, rates on CDs I think were like 2% or something. Like no one was using them because inflation was 3%. So you're still losing money regardless of where you put it. So, but now though, I mean, inflation's higher, but rates are 4 to 5% on these CDs.
If I remember right, Jeff, I think they started like in the early 70s.
There you go. So way longer than I've been around, and they were always that option where if you wanted just to put your money away safely, it was like buying a short-term bond type thing.
Yeah.
Like just government back, put it in, get your return, and then get your money out later. So that's a good option too if you don't want to if the market is overwhelming and you're like I don't know what to buy, the stocks are too funny, I have no idea. What if I put my money in and I need it out in 6 months and the market crashes? They have different levels. So there's like usually 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you can pick it beforehand.
You sent me a list a few weeks ago when we were talking about this.
Oh, did I?
15.
Yeah, we just Googled it.
Yeah.
And as of April 20th, you can get 5.05%. On the lowest one is $500.
See, there you go. So 5% on your money is ridiculous. I mean, I work in investments, and a couple of years ago, if people who were buying safer trust deeds were netting basically 5.99 to 6%. So the fact that you can get a CD right now for over 5% is like, in my world, that's shocking.
And that's what?
That's a 10-month hold too.
Yeah, so it's not even that long.
No.
I think the best right now, I looked the other day, was like 18 months is kind of where you get that like sweet spot of the highest return for your money.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like just under 6%, which again is shocking, but you can't touch that money for 18 months, right? So that's the give off or the take off.
Can you put more money into it once you've already put it in the
As far
CD?
as I know, no.
Okay.
No. I mean, I haven't used one in years, but it's frankly, from what I remember, is you put money into it and it's basically you sign, like it's locked away now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're literally buying, it's one transaction.
Yeah.
Now you can have multiple transactions on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can buy different amounts in the time period. Like you can buy a 3-month CD and then a 6-month and a 9-month at the same time, and then they have different liquidation periods. But I'm sure, honestly, the banks all have their own rules too. For all I know, there is a bank out there where you can add to it, but that'd be crazy because then technically the duration length would reduce as you're putting more money in, which would give you a lower rate of return. But yeah.
So as your money's growing with these CDs and whatnot, after the 6-month, 9-month, 18-month, whatever, and you get your money back, because your money has made money, do you owe taxes on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Any interest is going to get taxed at whatever your regular tax income is.
Okay.
Now, I have on my notes here to get into different investment vehicles, which will kind of ignore that depending on the way you do it. So let me see if I have anything else to add on that before I jump ahead here. So Rule 72. Okay, some compounding interest. So compounding interest, that's why I say time is really your best friend here, right? Because time is the one thing when it comes to investing that is going to make the biggest difference with all this stuff. So if you, I had an example here. I did some math last night quickly. So if you put $100 a month in to investment starting at age 20 through 65, it would cost you roughly $54,000 over the 45 years. If you put it in the $100 though into roughly 7%, you're going to have roughly $365,000 in. So people who preach this like all cash are like literally throwing away money, in my opinion. And I try and preach that in my world is like sitting on cash is literally losing money. It's losing cash for the most part. Because of that, and like it's just basic math, and that's the one factor that people kind of don't look at is it's like there's no opinion with a lot of these things, right? If you put money in at 7% over 45 years, it's going to grow and it's going to compound. The number will be that. If you do the same thing but you increase it by $100 every 10 years, then you'll have roughly $168,000 cost invested, but it'll be worth just under $1 million. It's like $750,000. So. And the reason I say increase by $100 every 10 years, typically as you get older, you're going to start making more money. You're going to get higher into your career. So if you're putting $100 a month in from 20 to 30, 200 in from 30 to 40, 300 in from 40 to 50, and so on until the age of 65. I mean, it's such a small amount in the long term when you're putting it in $100 a month type of situation. But then when you hit 65, to have $750,000 sitting in an account type thing. I think that's something that people don't do. And the next thing you know, you're 45 and you're like, well, I should probably start saving for retirement. And that's when it's getting, it's harder to, because time is your friend with this, right? So it's getting harder to do it. And so when time is on your side, I mean, literally start tonight, tomorrow. Go home and say, okay, I have an extra $25 a paycheck or an extra $25 a month, whatever it is. Literally just start stocking that away. Figure out a way to put
like
that
stocks?
In stocks.
in stocks, a money market account, in one of these higher yield savings accounts. I mean, like Ally Bank, I looked today because I have an Ally account. They're an online bank. It's free. Their savings account is 3.75%. It's just like a liquid savings account. Or the Apple credit card account, the savings. It's 4.1% for literally just a savings account. So that's a good way to start, in my
But
opinion.
if you invest in the stock market, chances are it's going to average at about 7,
Average
correct?
at 7, correct.
So
Assuming you're diversifying it. Most people, though, and like I'm one of them, everyone gets stoked on something. And you're like, oh man, Tesla's going big, right? You're like, whatever's going to go big.
I did that.
Yeah, and everyone's just like, okay, well, I could buy 10% of Tesla and then like go the rest, or I was like throw my money at Elon and hope he like tweets to the moon or something. So personally, like,
I was
unless
really
you
rich for like 3 days there.
exactly,
Yeah.
it's like, Brittany, quit your job, we're leaving.
If he tweets one more time, we're
Yeah,
millionaires.
then we're done. He's going to Idaho. Now, if you're gonna go in the stock market and you're gonna pick individual stocks, my only thing to you would be go into it with a plan. Don't go into it with I have a couple $100. Let's see what like Daddy wants to buy type thing. Right? Like you want to go into that and you want to say I am going to spread this out between blue chips, between like emerging markets, between international whatever, and that's all stuff that's on there and it's all data and you can literally just like Google it and see what it is. But it'll give you a good breakdown. Yes.
Is there apps that help in I
Yes.
guess
Like,
how
yes.
knowing what you're doing?
Yeah, like I think honestly, I think Robinhood is one of them. That if you want, you can pick for me, and then you can pick your splits as far as like kind of how you want to diversify, and then it'll give you options as far as like how you want to place that money into the market type thing. So there are ways to do it. I'm sure there's free websites too where you can say like determine risk factor with stocks and like give me a percentage, and it'll probably break it down for you. So there are certain ways to do it. The other option is too, just go to like TD Ameritrade. They have stores all over the place. You just walk in and say, I want to open an account, and they'll help you for free and just do it for you too. So that's literally how I started. I walked into a Scottrade store, I think it was. It was one that was over by my office in Irvine. And I just walked in and I was like, I have $300 I want to invest. And the guy was just like, do you have an account? Nope. He's like, sit down. And so I did, and then I didn't know what I was doing, and he kind of like walked me through some basics, and that's kind of how it started. But you got to start somewhere, right? I was probably sitting next to a guy who had a couple $1 million in there, and he's probably looking at me like I'm an idiot, but hopefully one day I'll be him and someone else walks in. So that's kind of how you have to start. Oh? Yes, please, go for it.
What are your thoughts on calls and puts then?
Stay away from them. That's also gambling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm aware.
Okay, are you guys familiar with calls and puts on options?
Nope.
No?
Not a bit.
Novice.
Basically, you determine the strike price. You're betting whether or not it's going to go up or down, the stock. If it goes up,
Even those that know don't know. That's when you stay away from something.
it's not an enjoyable experience. You're just going to lose your money quickly.
Okay.
That's very true.
Yeah, and if you want to like see what it looks like, go on Reddit and go to what's the Reddit?
Oh my gosh, why am I blinking?
Wall Street Bets.
Yep.
Go on Wall Street Bets and like you'll see people talk about
This one's gonna make it.
yeah, and they'll lose $30,000 overnight because they're basically betting on the company going down. Well, if you don't put a stop limit on your money going down, that you can continue to lose money perpetually, depending on kind of how the stock goes and if things don't hit the fan. So I would just stay away from option trading for the now. And if you do that, get professional help. And this is not financial advice, by the way. Let's throw that out there. These views are my own and not of Valkyris.
That's fair. Good little discount.
Yeah, thank you.
Is Valkyris publicly traded or?
We are not.
No, just.
No, just by Chris and my partner right now, the only owners. Okay, so Rule 72, investing in stock market. Dollar cost averaging. You guys know what dollar cost averaging is?
Nope.
Okay, so if you have $1,000 to invest, you could either go to the market and you say, okay, I'm going to buy $1,000 of Tesla tomorrow. Or the idea of dollar cost averaging is you say, I have $1,000, I'm going to buy $100 worth of Tesla each month over 10 months. The idea being you're hitting the highs and lows kind of as the market goes. The whole idea of dollar cost averaging is to not hit the peaks, the highs and low, right? Because time in the market is better than timing the market, is the old saying, right? Because none of us are smarter than the market. Even the algorithms in New York still fail and people lose money in their hedge funds. So the only thing you can do is you can just roll with it, and you basically just buy as spread out as possible. And that way you're never going in at the peak, you're never going at the low, you're never going at the middle, you're just kind of going with it. And as long as you never sell, odds are you'll have a nice little graph that goes up over 30 or 40 years at roughly 7% return. So, with that being said, if you ever get a fat chunk of change, don't just be like, I'm going to put it all in at one time. The idea of dollar cost averaging is you get the highs and lows, and it gives you a better average over time.
Huh.
Interesting.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
That's like a big principle.
I would not have
dollar cost
thought that.
averaging. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the other reason like 401k is people will say if you're a big income earner and you have a 401k and you're going to hit your max prior to the end of the year, they'll say reduce your percentage and calculate it so that you max in like December. So that way you put a little bit into your 401k throughout the year rather than just like banging it out in the first couple months, because for all you know the market's going to crash in month 5 and then all of a sudden you put all your chips in at height. So that's kind of the idea. Any questions on that stuff?
Huh?
No? Okay. Index funds and ETFs, I went into the differences with those. They're really the same thing as far as how they track the market and overall. It's just the way you trade them is a little bit different. Mutual funds, have you guys heard the word mutual funds before?
Yeah.
Same sort of idea, except it's traded by a professional for the most part. So you go through a company who's like a Schwab or whoever else that's doing it for you. Higher fees are associated though. So most index funds, ETFs, whatever vehicles you're putting your 401k or retirement into, you're going to see a cost associated with it. And so index funds, the reason I like them is because they have the cheapest cost when it comes to actually purchasing the security itself, versus like a mutual fund, they might charge you 1% per year for you to purchase it. Because behind the scenes, there's a team of people who are adjusting that mutual fund to kind of follow the guidelines that they put in place and why you went into it in the first place. So you'll say, okay, this mutual fund is going to follow East Asia, emerging markets, whatever it is, right? And then so you're going to say, okay, put money into that. Well, there's a team of people behind the scenes following that market who is then adjusting where your money is placed within the mutual fund itself, and they're trading and doing stuff daily. So you're paying for that. You're paying for that service. So whenever you buy an ETF, an index, or whatever it is, look at what the cost is to run it. Index funds are by far going to be your cheapest option. Those are the ones that you have to have $3,000 to start, but once you get that $3,000, then you can put in $5 a month if you want to. That's the only limit. So doing so, though, it gives you the ability to have the same benefits without the massive cost of actually someone running it, because you know that this index fund is going to track the top 500 or the top 2,000, whatever it is, and then that's it. You don't need to worry about it anymore, type thing. So that's kind of the idea with that. Target date funds. Anyone familiar with the target date fund? No? Okay, so if you have a job that has a 401k, when you're looking at your list of things you can put your money into, you're going to see all the stuff I talked about, ETFs, index funds, stocks, whatever. And at the very bottom, you're going to see things like target date 2050, target date 2055, target date 2060. That is essentially saying that if whatever your target date of retirement is, so you say, okay, I'm this age and I should be retiring at 65, which means that'll put me at, okay, 2055 is my target date of retirement at age 65 or 60, whatever you choose. Putting your money into that, what that's going to do is it's going to be it's going to move on you. Meaning you're going to put it in now and it's going to be more aggressive because you're younger. And so when you put it in now, you probably get a higher rate of return. But the closer you get to retirement or whatever that target date is, it will slowly transition into more bonds and other safer blue chips and other things like that, so that the closer you are to retirement, the less volatility you have, is the idea of the target date fund. They're great if you don't know what you're doing and you want nothing to do with it and you don't care about paying a higher price. But you do pay more to purchase those because there is someone, again, actively behind the scenes adjusting where that money is placed as time goes on. So what I do, I have target date, but it's a small percent of my portfolio. Mine's mainly index, honestly most of it's index, and then a small piece of it is target date, and the other part I have a small piece that's bonds. But like those two things are tiny in my portfolio. Because I'm younger, I have the ability to be more aggressive now, right? But if you're 55, you're like, I'm retiring in 10 years, odds are you don't want to put a bunch of your money into really aggressive stocks because you don't want those things to plummet, and then now you're about to retire and you're like, well, there goes all my money. You want to put it into more bond type securities because you know that's going to likely just stay even, if up, down slightly, kind of as you go. So target date will adjust where your money is placed as it goes on without you kind of having to do anything. So that's what a target date fund is. Any questions on that?
Not necessarily on that specifically.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about like a portfolio and like having, some money in, CDs, some in money markets, some in real estate, some in 401k, all this, how do you keep track of it?
Well, if you're lucky enough to have such a massive portfolio that it's hard to track, odds are you have someone doing it for you. Now, me, I mean, it's not like it. Really, my bank is my quote unquote portfolio, right? I mean, like I look at it and I say I have my house, I have money in trust deeds, and then stocks are linked to my bank anyway. So it's not a difficult. I mean, now with technology, I should say, it's not difficult to track. And it probably sounds overwhelming because these things all have different names, but they all kind of link together for you to kind of easily track.
Okay.
And like I use QuickBooks to track my own like personal finances, which I know is more of a business-based type software, but you can use it for personal accounts too. And I think that's probably your best tool, is to give you an overall picture. Because each year, if your net worth goes up, you know you're doing something right? But if it stays even or go down, then you know that something's wrong. Net worth is your most true picture as far as like how you're doing financially, because obviously that takes into account your net, meaning your debts, liabilities, and it kind of averages that out for you. So that's what I use. I use QuickBooks to kind of track everything, but frankly, when you're starting out, it's going to be all just be in like your bank or your brokerage account at TD Ameritrade or Scottrade or whatever it is. So it's all pretty easy, and most of that stuff is free anyways, and you can just have an account that costs nothing, but you can kind of track it in there.
Okay.
Yeah. I use Chase for my bank, and they have their stock account is called Chase U Invest, and it's in my bank account. So like I see all my accounts, and then at the bottom I'll see my stock account. You can do it too, where you can add like external third-party accounts within your bank account. And a lot of banks offer that, where it'll link with your stock account, so you can see the balance in the same place. But that's kind of where I'd start.
Okay.
Personally, yeah.
Is there a rule for percentages?
No, it's all risk factor based. I mean, the younger you are, the riskier
You can afford to be.
that you can afford to be.
Sure.
I was risky. I loved it. Like I mean, but I work in it, right? So
Sure.
like, I'm balls to the wall as much as I can, because I know what the factors are, and I try and avoid them. But when it comes to the trust deed side specifically, the market side itself, I literally just buy index funds, which is so boring. And like, I'm always just like, man, I wish I bought Tesla. Man, I wish I bought this. Man, I wish I bought this. Which I own little bits of it, but I mean, there's for every Tesla, there's 1,000 stocks that people dumped a bunch of money in and just completely tanked, went off the map.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things you got to figure out as you say, okay, do I want to take that risk? Sure, take that risk. Take it with 5% of your money. Take it with 10%. You're going to buy a bunch of Dogecoin? Great. Say I'm only buying 5% total of my investment with it. And like, I have crypto, but I keep it at 5% or less of my entire portfolio that's invested. And I religiously track that 5% because I know that anything that I'm putting in there, I could just lose tomorrow, right? I mean, whether it's money in FTX that is going to go bankrupt, and you have stuff you have literally no control over. Even if your money is in a crypto, like a Bitcoin or whatever it is, it could be an FTX and you could lose it tomorrow. Like, you have no idea. So build those into your risk factors and understand kind of what that is. Doing so will give you this like plan, so that you go in with the plan, so it's not so overwhelming. You go into it saying, I'm doing this percentage, this percentage, this percentage. You figure out what it is you like within those percentages, and you go from there, and it's super easy. But that's the idea. Develop the plan so that way you go into it knowing what you're doing, and that way it's not like this, I'm buying Dogecoin and Tesla type thing. So that's kind of the idea. Yeah. Avoid emotional decisions. Kind of what I just talked about. But if you buy a stock and it plummets, if you don't need that money, don't sell that stock.
At Tesla?
Tesla, or honestly, crypto is like the biggest one, right? People dump their money into Bitcoin at 50 grand, and then they see it drop to 40, and they freak out and sell it. Well, great, you just lost $10,000. The next day, it's back to 52.
Mm-hmm.
So buy and hold is like a great way, is this like method in crypto everyone always talks about, right? Like, hold it, which to a certain extent, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the goal in general, is invest money you don't need liquid, and if you do, just ready to ride that wave because if you don't want to ride the wave, you're in too risky of an asset. Then go back down to the baby pool where there are no waves and just ride that bond or something, where it's going to be at like 4% and you're just going to sit and you're just going to watch it and you'll be happy with it. But the emotional decisions, I think, where most people get in trouble is, so don't do that. Any questions on emotional decision making with selling stocks? Go at the low.
To not to.
Yes.
Is there a point where like you're watching it and it's continuously going down and down? Like you're like, okay, I'm leaving it, and let's say after a solid like 2 weeks, it's still continuously going down, and you've lost a chunk of that money, and you're like, is it okay to eventually be like, you know what, I could put this into something else that would be more beneficial? Can I take it out then, or would you still say ride the wave?
Yeah, so it's really that's a personal decision for you.
Okay.
Think of people who in 2006 were buying stocks like crazy, and they were riding that wave because it was going up, right? And they're like, this is amazing, I'm rich, I'm having the best time of my life, etc. Stock market crashes, and there's 24 straight months of a bear market, so it's terrible, right? So every month this thing is just going down, whatever it is, and 24 might not be the number, but it's close. Anyone who sold during those times, they figured they had, say it's 100 shares of Apple in 2006. They had still 100 shares of Apple in 2007. They still had 100 shares of Apple in 2008, but they sold it. Well, now those same 100 shares, they didn't technically lose anything. The value of those shares went down, but they still had those 100 shares. That never changed. Now, people who kept it, 2013, 2012, whatever it was almost back to where it was in the previous year. So the reason I'm saying that is people will say, oh, the stock keeps going down, I'm losing money. No, you still own the same amount of stock. And assuming you are fine with that, and you can take the time to just wait and sit, technically, for all you know, in a year or 2 years, whatever it is, that stock will be worth more than it is now because of that. You're not losing money. The stock you own has lost some value, but for all you know, it's going to go back up again.
Gotcha.
So that's the main thing you need to think about is, can I hold that stock or hold whatever it is and not be worried about it? So, yeah.
Is that why you also see like a lot of people, like when it's continuously falling down, those are the same people that keep buying in more and more of it? Oh.
Yeah. But there's double-edged sword, right? They call it catch the falling knife, where if you keep buying low, you're basically putting your money in and it's dropping money in, dropping money in, dropping. Now, if you know something none of us know and you know it's going to go back up again, great, go for it. Or the idea is dollar cost averaging. You can dollar cost average something down, they call it, where basically you're buying it daily, and even if it's still going down, you're just buying it daily. And you're just buying it the whole way down. And you're just going down, and you know eventually you're going to keep buying, but one day you're going to be buying at the bottom. And then one day it's going to start going back up again, and you're going to dollar cost average up. But then at the end of the day, you're still buying at the lowest point possible because no one knows when that lowest point is. So if you just say, F it, I don't know when that is. I give up. But you know what? I'm going to buy $10 a day. And it is what it is. And I'm going to put $300 a month into this stock, and I'm going to buy it $10 a day. Eventually, you'll be buying it at the best price. You won't know when that is, but eventually you will probably get there, right? But you'll also buy at the worst time. But at the end of the day, it's all going to average out. So
unless it's Bed Bath and Beyond.
Unless you bought AMC at like $50, right? I think you're fine.
Hold it.
Yeah, exactly. Stay in the meme stocks. Don't get me started on that.
That was a fun day.
Yeah. Okay, so the emotional decision making. I go through that. Any questions on
it? Is sad though about the meme stuff because that's literally what got me interested in it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it was a great gateway drug to this whole process.
Oh, so many people's first investment.
Absolutely. And I made a boatload of money, and at the time, Brittany and I were saving to buy a house, and so I threw a good chunk of my money into this meme coin. Seriously.
GameStop?
No, I did all Doge, but I mean, I made a lot of money on Doge and then lost a lot of money on Doge. Yeah. But that's what got me interested in starting to think like, okay, I should take this seriously and put some money in the market across the board.
Yeah. No, exactly. And actually, it go from like this is fun to like, okay, how do I plan this?
Yeah. And
that's the piece I think people like where the meme stocks have kind of benefited is it has gotten people interested in this in general, and it's taken it from this thing where it's like I don't invest, that's for old people, to okay, maybe I do start this slowly, and I think that's the key, right? It's opening up to the younger generations, make them understand and give them the education that no, just because you have $10 doesn't mean you can't start now. Because if you do $10 right now a month, even if you're super young. Cool. At the end of the year, you're gonna have $120 plus 7%. Like that's pretty solid. You're gonna have $120. You know, like whatever it is, $130. So that's the idea. But like even for me, like I own GameStop. Literally, my daughter was being born. I'm in the hospital. Like I'm not kidding. This is a real story. This is a real story. I bought GameStop and I was sitting there watching it. And it was going up and down, whatever it was, and then it plummeted. It was like because I think I bought it like $300, whatever it was.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it plummeted down to like 180, and so we're watching it. The day my wife is giving birth, I'm in the hospital. She's like knocked out from all the drugs because she horrible pain and everything else. And I look at my phone and I get a little alert saying GameStop just hit 310 or whatever it was.
$3.10?
No, $310.
Oh wow.
And I literally I'm on my phone like selling all the crap I have. So I'm like, get me out of this. Like I made an emotional decision. I ended up making like a couple $1,000 because I think like I said I bought it 300 and I sold it 310 or 12 or whatever it was. But it was just pure luck. That number one, I had that alert on my phone because I was in the hospital and I would not have been looking at my stock account had I had not thought of it. But the stars aligned and like I was able to get out somehow versus like most of them just keep going down and it is what it is. So happens to the best of us.
Do you name your daughter after any game?
Her name is Dog. No, it's not. Her name is Charlotte. So
with a silent E at the end.
Yeah, with a silent E. Yeah, exactly.
Her name is NCAA football.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's fun.
NC7, the real dream.
Exactly.
MCA Sports.
It's in the game.
So I have basically two more little sections here. One is on different investment vehicles in regarding diversification, and the other one is kind of practical steps in order to start.
Cool.
Is there anything specific you guys want me to? Any questions you want me to like focus on specifically, or I'm just kind of winging it here? So you guys tell me if I'm missing anything.
So I am a voracious reader.
Okay.
I get interested in something and I tend to be kind of obsessive with things, and so I go all the way down to the bottom of the barrel on things. This is something where I find myself kind of maybe getting into. Mm-hmm. What are some good resources for me to maybe like research? Books, people, that kind of thing?
Two books I recommend. One is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That was one of the first ones I read. That whole idea is to build assets, not debts. To build other sources of income from things that'll make money for you, which is kind of what I do for a living when it comes to trust deeds investments. But the whole idea for him is Rich Dad, Poor Dad is he learned from his buddy's dad, who's a rich dad, kind of how to make your money work for you. But he does it in a good way to break it down so that it logically makes sense to the average person. I read that book, I listened to it on Audible going to Vegas one time. I was by myself. My buddies were already out there. I was driving out there. I was like 22. I threw it on my Audible or whatever it was at the time, probably a CD from the library. There you go. And I listened to.
Just bought.
There you go. And it's like, what is it, 8 hours?
Amazon right now.
Is it 8 hours long? 6 hours?
Oh, you guys do audibles or like
I'm an
audiobooks.
Audible guy.
That's
It's
being
8
adult.
hours and 22
8
minutes.
hours. So I listened to the entire book to Vegas and then back from Vegas. I finished it when I was pulling back into my house. But it's such a good book because it kind of just takes you get sucked into it, and then you're driving. And you're like, yeah, like this is easy. Like, why has no one ever told me this before? Like, it's a good way to kind of get into it.
okay.
The other one is I think it's The Millionaire Next Door. I think is what it's called. Which I have it somewhere on my Audible, so I can tell you the exact name if it's not up. But that one, the whole idea is how the average person making a salary of $60,000 to $80,000 a year, whatever it is, could easily be a millionaire by the time they retire, just from basic savings and not trying to like keep up with the Joneses type thing. And it goes into how the average person, if you just live your life and you invest 20% of your paycheck, whatever it is, by the time you retire, you're going to be worth over $1 million from making $65,000 a year, whatever it is. The idea being that no one ever knows you have that money because you're just living your day job, putting 20% away, and then one day at 60, your friends are all bankrupt because they spent their money on, I don't know, nice Tesla outside or something with a big hole with duct tape on it. But and they and then you didn't, and you were driving around that 15-year-old Corolla the entire time, right?
Huzzah!
And so that's also a good book though. To kind of give you just more insight on just like figuring out like, okay, like where am I comfortable? You don't need to wear Gucci to fit in with your friends, and you'll be good. So
Can I ask you a question? It's finance related, but it's not related to anything that we have talked about here. and it seems to be more in the news lately, the whole thing of our currency being digital.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that playing into different kinds of investments?
Yeah, I think crypto has its place. I really do. And people get so emotional over it. I don't know why. They either hate it or they love it. And I'm like just live your day job. Like, live your life. I don't like. No one cares. Just if you're into it, even if you're not into it, in my opinion, it's hedging the future. It's hedging your bet.
Okay, crypto.
Is that what you mean?
Well, not just crypto, but like the government is talking about digitalizing our monies.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
I've never heard of that. Like, they're digitalizing the dollar?
Yeah.
They I think they just passed the bill for it too.
Did they?
Yeah.
How are they going to do that? It's backed by gold.
Right.
It's a great
Yeah,
question.
it's I don't
I
understand.
mean, we haven't had the gold standard actually in quite a long time, so maybe not, but
Yeah,
We'll
yeah. I
print
don't
money like
I don't
nobody's business.
understand all the mechanics of
Yeah.
it, but
I mean-
there are some countries where, and I've read some things recently where they can actually, if they digitalize it, your money, they can allow your money to expire.
Of course they can.
They can put an expiration date,
yeah.
and then obviously
That's interesting.
the whole
Because then it makes it emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
For me,
does.
Yeah.
you're just telling me don't make an emotional decision, but I would
It
immediately
makes-
make emotional decisions.
Well, and that's the reason I bring it up,
No.
because it makes life emotional.
But it's counterintuitive to the idea that is digital currency, which is this like untethered
That's what I said.
currency that is not controlled by anyone, right? It's this like mythical blockchain that no one knows what it is, that everyone says. Frankly, I'm still not sure what it is, 100%. But if it's tethered to the government, that's I don't like why. What is the benefit of having a currency that could expire when I could just have my my dollar type thing? I don't know why. I mean, yeah, because I don't like that.
Well, I don't like the concept of it
I don't
either.
like that.
But
It took them all in 60 seconds.
Yeah,
I don't like that.
How is it different?
My brain just broke a little bit. It was like this
Yeah.
isn't
How would it be different from money right now? Because it's like,
The
I
government
mean, I go through
controls
my
it.
week spending maybe $20 worth of cash. Everything else is through my phone or credit card, or, I mean, it's pretty much
Oh, yeah.
digital as it is.
Yeah, but digital to I mean, because again, the idea of the cryptocurrency is this untraceable thing that you can easily do between people, right? And that's why it's got this like gnarly background of all this illegal activity. As soon as the government controls it, I guess they're
then it's just like it is now. though.
yeah, but their argument's going to say, okay, but we can actually like tax it properly now, and you can use it for legitimate reasons. But again, I don't know how it's different than having money in a bank account and sending a wire. But I also don't know anything about this bill, so I could be
well,
off.
I'm just guessing, honestly. Do you think it could possibly be a way to like kind of control inflation at that point? That might be what they're trying to do with
That's
it.
probably what they're trying to do.
Because if if you just go like, okay, we're gonna expire all this money that's been floating around. Now your dollar becomes worth more.
Yeah,
And
but
it
I
could,
mean,
like,
it would need to be a global currency then, though, because you figure
Yeah.
cost of goods is international. Inflation's
Yeah.
worldwide. It's not. I mean, for the most part, it does have its ripple effects. I mean, that's why everything overseas can affect us here with production and shipping. I mean, that's an interesting idea for sure. Either way, I'm not gonna do that. So, yeah, and that does make it emotional and strange.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
And good news, if it does become global, the Bible predicts that. That there will be a global currency. And it is, by the way, one of the signs of the end times.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Sweet.
You need it.
Hey, so put your money on red at that point. if we're getting to the end there, then go out with a bang. You had a question?
A question more about your business. Do you
Yeah.
you specialize in commercial lending, industrial office? What do
No,
you-
so it's mostly residential. We do some commercial or residential, we do some commercial, industrial, land, that kind of stuff. Why don't I talk about what I do? I realize I completely skipped over that part. So I am what you call it. So by trade, I'm a mortgage broker. That's the license I have. It's a broker's license. But I don't do a typical kind of lending. You wouldn't call me to go buy a house. You wouldn't, like a house you're going to live in. You wouldn't call me to get cash out to pay for your college education or anything like that. So we are what you call a business purpose lender. So people come to us for quick loans that are asset based for typically buying a rental, buying a short sale, fix and flip, quick cash for their business, like capital injection, that kind of thing. And we essentially used a piece of property as leverage, to get the loan itself. So someone come to us and say, I have a house worth $1 million and need to borrow $500,000. We say, okay, here's the money, and we can close in a week or two at the longest. And we don't require bank statements, tax returns, proof of income, anything like that. But we have that house as collateral. So if they ever stop making payments and they disappear off the face of the earth and they give us the middle finger and walk away, and we never see that $500,000 ever again, then basically we okay, we're going to foreclose on that house then and get our money back that way and put the house to sale. It's rare that it gets that far because most people just pay their mortgage like anybody else. But that's kind of what we do. And so we're the middleman though. So we have this person who's the borrower who wants to borrow the money and has the house as collateral, and then there's this person who is the investor. And they say, oh, I have that $500,000 and I'll lend it to you. And then we're in the center and we'll say, okay, it's going to be 10% interest for the $500,000. So this person will say, okay, all right, here's my $500,000. We do all the loan documents, we do the paperwork, we do the deeds, we record it with the county, everything. And then that person gets the $500 or $500,000, and then they make payments to us just like they would any bank. And then we give those monthly payments to our investor. So that's kind of what we do. Recently, we've expanded into 8 other states, I think it is. We're in California, obviously, a brick and mortar, and then we now lend in Hawaii, Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Washington. So we've expanded a lot recently, so it's kind of fun to learn the new real estate markets, and every state is completely different. I'm the one in charge of it, so I'm a master of lending guidelines now in many different states and all the different issues associated with each of those things. So,
what would you say is one of the most irritating issues to deal with different state-wise?
Each state is its own beast for the most part. Probably foreclosure guidelines are the biggest pain in the butt. California is notoriously medium length kind of when it comes to our foreclosure issues. So for us, you have 90 days to reinstate after you file your notice of default, which basically is a public record filing saying you're going to foreclose. And then from there, you can set a sale date, wait another 21 days, and then you can take the property to sale. That's barring any issues, bankruptcy, or other games the person can play. Now, in certain states that are that are judicial foreclosure states, which means there's an actual lawsuit involved in order to foreclose the property, it can take 300, 400, 500 days to do the same thing. Certain states like that are Florida, and I believe Hawaii is still like that right now. I think Hawaii, last I checked, was averaging roughly 2,000 days to foreclose on a property when it came to Hawaiian guidelines. So if there's like Hawaiian blood involved when it comes to the tenants or the parcel that it's sitting on, because they just have way more protections when it comes to like native Hawaiian type people if you have a certain percentage of blood.
Have you noticed any uptick in defaults lately, or it's been pretty solid?
I actually looked the other day. The biggest defaults right now are FHA loans. So, which is funny enough because hard money, what we do, private money, conventional loans, VA, all the other type of transactions, I think are averaging nationwide 4%. FHA is like 9.5%. But you got to figure FHA is also a different type of buyer. So, FHA loan, for what you guys, if anyone doesn't know, is first-time home buyer loan. And the idea is you can put down a much smaller percentage of a down payment to get into a property. Think of it as a way to give a young person the ability to buy a property, to actually get into the market without having to put down 20% to buy it, to get a conventional loan. Problem is, when you put down 3% to buy a property, if the value fluctuates at all, you could be upside down very quickly. On top of that, typically an FHA buyer has a lower income because they're younger, and so a larger chunk of their actual income is going to go towards necessities. Versus having lots of extra money to spend on other things. So if there's any sort of tightening in a job, then it makes it harder for them to pay their mortgage because there's not a big buffer there. So FHA loans, I think, are the thing right now that people are figuring out. I think is going to be a next kind of like issue, I guess, sort of when it comes to those. But we don't do them at all. So, but that's kind of what I'm seeing. But as far as like most mortgages, foreclosures are not on the rise. No. Yeah. Sometimes.
Cool.
Yeah.
What was that last point you had?
Sign up.
Practical some things to get into the market.
Okay, I had 2 things. So different investment vehicles. How do I say this without putting you to sleep? IRA. You guys know what an IRA is?
Unfortunately, not really.
Okay, so an IRA is an individual retirement account. You can open it up at most brokerage places also. You can say, I want to open an IRA. So there's a Roth IRA and there's a regular IRA. A Roth IRA is probably what I would recommend. This is not financial advice, but I'd recommend, and I would speak with the financial advisor before you make the decision. But it's a way to put your money in to where you're being taxed on it now before you put that money into the account. So if you're getting, like if you set up it through your employer, for instance, and you have like a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, what will happen is that money is actually going to be, you're going to get paid, say $100. You're going to get taxed on that $100 as it goes into the account itself. Now, what that means though is when you take that money out later, it's going to be tax-free money. So it's a benefit because you're getting taxed at right now what you hope is your lowest income bracket. That way, when you're older and you're making a lot more money and you pull that money out, you're not paying your current taxable income on it. Versus a 401k, which is it goes in pre-tax, but when you pick it out, you're going to get taxed on that whatever your income level is at that time. Setting one up early is the best possible option regardless. So if you're going to open up a Roth 401k, a Roth IRA through your employer, whatever it is, or just through a regular brokerage, doing so kind of gives you the tax benefits I was talking about earlier, because the more money you can put in now, say you're making $60,000 a year, your tax bracket now is a lot lower than it will be if you're making $200,000 a year when you're 60 and you want to pull some money out. So that kind of gives you the ability to pay that low tax now. It's going to grow interest free. You're going to take it out later. Sorry, tax free. You're going to grow. It's going to grow. Take it out later, you're not going to have to pay the tax on it at the time. There is an income limit to Roths. I want to say it's $140, I think, a year for an individual, like $200 a year for a couple, but I could be off on those numbers slightly. So just check with your tax person. But I'd recommend opening those because they're free to open, same idea, but it's a way for you to start building money to the side that you're not going to touch, that one day you're going to look at it and be like, oh yeah. Like, so glad I was 30 years ago, I started putting $100 in a month type thing into this because it's going to make a huge difference, especially if it's a Roth and you're paying the taxes in the lower brackets when you take it out later. You're going to be very excited. 401k, Roth IRA, so those are kind of the three ideas. 401k is obviously through the employer. That's really the tax advantages for long-term growth is through those vehicles. So very good with those. Diversification I kind of went into, practical steps to start investing, setting clear financial goals. First though is the emergency fund. So I preach an emergency fund. I'm a big fan of it. I think everyone should have one. It's how you get through life without having kind of what I grew up with, where if something breaks, you're like, okay, what are we not paying this month to replace the washer? What are we not paying this month to replace the dryer, right? Like I grew up in a house where it was constantly this like, things only broke when around Christmas, right? Like we're buying presents for the kids, but our dryer broke. Now what do we do? No, so there'd be literally a string going across my backyard, and I would just see shirts like and pants hung over, right? And I'm like, oh, dryer's out again. Must be Christmas time. Like that's just how it worked. Emergency fund they say is 3 to 6 months. 6 months is technically what everyone says. Now depending on what your monthly bills are, 6 months can be a lot of money, especially as you get a family, a mortgage, everything else. And that pains me because then you have a bunch of money sitting in basically an interest-free account. But now with the higher interest rate savings accounts, it kind of solves that. So putting your emergency fund into a higher yield savings account, in my opinion, is probably the best bet. Especially because you don't plan on touching it unless you absolutely need to. So it's easy to transfer out of a savings account, like an online bank or something, if you need to. Just make sure it doesn't go over $250,000, so you don't lose that FDIC. But I doubt anyone's 6 month will go over $250,000.
Nope.
No. You go with that? Yeah. Okay, good. Any questions on building an emergency fund? Because I'd recommend starting that first, honestly. If you're going to start investing, do a 3 month at least emergency fund, and then put some money into investments if you can't wait, and then build another 3 months. But having that 6 month thing is going to just it's going to change your life.
So when you say 3 to 6 months, are you talking about your actual income for 3 to 6 months, or just like your expenses?
Yeah, your actual expenses. So if you say, okay, I spend $6,000 a month to survive. My bills are $3,000, food, whatever it is, it's $6,000 roughly a month is what I pay. Okay, great. You want to have $36,000 sitting in an account. That way, if you fall off a friggin' bridge tomorrow and you don't have disability insurance and you can't move for 5 months, you know that you're covered and you're not going to be out on the street type thing. That's sort of the idea. It's more important, obviously, as you have kids and you have more responsibilities. then you can get into ideas of disability insurance and everything else that you have with that. But emergency fund, I think, is very important because it also lets you invest without that fear of saying, okay, this is my savings and I'm investing my savings. Because if it doesn't do well, then you just lost your savings. Versus if you have an emergency fund, you at least know you're not going to be on the street tomorrow. So, developing and maintaining a budget. I'll talk about this. I didn't do this, so do what I say, not as I do. Building a budget, honestly, people I know who have like built a budget and followed that budget, God bless them. I'm very proud of them. I was not that disciplined. But I know that that's an easy way to do things. So if you want to build a budget, I think it's a great idea. Go for it. Working with a financial advisor, that's kind of what I said earlier. There are so many free tools to people who literally know nothing now that were not there 10, 15 years ago. Biggerpockets.com is a massive one. That is a website that you can go on. There are free webinars. There are free articles. Everything you can think of about investing, saving, investing in real estate, everything. Biggerpockets.com. They have free podcasts. So much good information on there. I use them quite a bit. I've been looking at multifamily properties. They even have like webinars on investing in multifamily. They give you algorithms to figure out properties in the market and how to figure out the caps and how to figure out the NOI, the net operating income. And they offer so many good tools that you would have literally never known existed.
So biggerpockets.com?
Biggerpockets.com.
Okay.
And if you get bored with those two books and you're done with them, start listening to their podcasts. They have fantastic information. And it's a big community. And it started out, I think, in like 06 or 05 or something like that, by a guy named Josh. And he built it to essentially be just a place where you could go on. And it was basically a blog where people would just like talk about financial advice and like how to do things that we're kind of talking about right now. But it's become this resource now to basically for anybody to be able to just like get basic financial education that is not out there. So that's a good way to do it. Otherwise, like I said, just walk into a location, E-Trade or whatever, and you'll be fine. Okay. Dave Ramsey. What are your guys' thoughts on Dave Ramsey? His preachings about finances. Anyone have any
I don't
ideas?
know a lot.
Frankly, I mean, honestly, I know a little about it too, but I have my opinions on it already. So,
What are your opinions?
My opinions are, I like most of what he says, but I'm very against the idea of being a pure cash buyer and having no debt and having no credit cards. I mean, I'm a big credit card guy. I love credit cards, simply because they pay for all my vacations and like most of the upgrades around my house. I think that if you are kind of what I mentioned earlier, being full cash, I think you're losing out on an opportunity to make free money. Because you're losing out on interest, you're losing out on that return that you're not going to get otherwise. These higher savings rates are going to help. But at the end of the day, I think credit cards have their place if you work them properly. I personally use credit cards, but I pay them off every 2 weeks. So as I get paid, I pay off that credit card. I don't carry any revolving debt past that pay period. So I'm basically using it as if I'm using the cash, and then when I get paid, I literally pay all my credit cards to zero. But doing so, you get the benefits of using the points, you get the benefits of using all the perks that they come with, which these days are just absolutely insane. Like I fly for free all the time, I stay at hotels for free all the time, simply because instead of saying, here's money, I just swipe a card and then every 2 weeks you have to have the discipline to pay it off. Assuming you can do that though, I highly recommend them for anybody. But the problem is people won't use them properly. So
I think that's the big rub right there.
Yeah.
Is, I'll pay it off next month.
Yeah.
It's like,
no, and as soon that first inkling of I'll pay it off next month, or I'll just pay it and I'll pay a little more this month, that's when you're gonna get in trouble, right?
Yep.
So as long as you have that discipline, but that's what investing in general is. Investing is basically a way to discipline yourself to understand, okay, here is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to spend this extra 20% per paycheck. I'm going to invest it for whatever reason. The whole idea of that is discipline, which I'm sure you preach constantly, and what you guys do is discipline is the main factor in any growth in life, and any way that you develop and become a better person is understanding that you cannot work off emotional reactions. You have to discipline yourself and understand how you're going to move forward and how you're going to be better, whether it's through faith, whether it's through your marriage, whether it's through your friends, business, or investing. Discipline is like the number one rule of it, and that's, I think, with credit cards and savings in general, if you handle both those things properly, it's a combo that is, you're leaving so much money on the table if you're not utilizing them properly. And so I'm a huge fan of it. Yeah.
know you didn't like Ramsey, especially when paying all cash. I know you mentioned it's all cash for real estate and all that, but how much leverage do you think is too risky? I know it's probably individual, but like, how much do you think where it's like, oh, you probably shouldn't have like 95% loan to value on this thing or something? Like, are you?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely an individual aspect. I mean, me personally, I want to pay. I'm weird in a sense because I know mathematically it doesn't make sense. And people tell me I'm weird when I say that your primary, in my mind, should be free and clear eventually. Pay the thing off, get a mortgage on it, even if it's 3%. Everyone says no. Take that balance, invest it at 7%. Like, I know, but when it comes, same idea as the emergency fund, to have that peace of mind to know that your house is not a debt and it's simply something that is free and clear. If you can ever get to that point, which is a dream in itself, right? It takes you 30 years to pay off a mortgage. That's insane. If you can ever get to that point, I am all for not leveraging that to pull cash out to invest in it in something else to hope that you make that, 4, 5, 6% spread. I think that peace of mind is worth more than any 4 to 5% spread you're going to get on that money. Now, if you have rentals and you have other properties that are purely income generating properties and you want to leverage those to a responsible degree to continue to buy other rental properties, and that's what you do, and that's what a lot of people do for a living, is they do the BRRRR method: buy, rehab, refinance, repeat. Buy a property, throw 20 grand into it, refinance it, flip it, make some money, or whatever, or they rent it out. I'm probably butchering whatever the BRRRR thing was, but that's what they do. That's what their job. That's what they understand. So for me personally, your primary residence, I would say, don't mess with it. I love the idea of having a free and clear home eventually, and that's what I want. If you got rentals that are generating money and you want to leverage those to buy more rentals and you know what you're doing, go for it. But yeah.
Okay.
As long as you don't show this to Dave Ramsey, I'll be good.
So I've gone through his whole like financial peace university thing.
Yeah.
Brittany and I did it right before we got married, and there are some really good principles in it.
Yeah.
Especially his emergency fund. He preaches that hardcore. And Britt and I have really done our best to keep an emergency fund, and it's come in so handy. Like on our Thanksgiving vacation last year, we're driving to Texas, and we had two flat tires. Had to buy 4 flat tires on a vacation where we're going to celebrate Christmas.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to worry about, where's the
Levi
money.
wanted a new tire for Christmas anyway.
Yeah, but like we didn't have to worry about like how are we going to afford this next month. It was no, here's the money because we've saved it. We're safe. We don't have to worry about this.
No, and I think the idea behind what he's saying is phenomenal. I think the fact that he's getting out so much financial education to the average, because the average person should probably be paying cash, honestly.
Yeah.
The average person though isn't going to take their finances seriously, and they don't have the self-control or discipline to be able to control themselves. So when it comes to that, pay cash. Discipline yourself, because if you're the kind of person where you're either here or you're here, and this one is just leveraged to the hilt and a bunch of debt, and this one is just none at all, but you're losing out on that interest, go here, lose the interest, and just be a happy camper, right? I think that's what he's going to the average consumer, and he's saying, listen, if it's so hard to control this, then just stop. Nothing to control, pay everything off, pay cash, drive down your debt as much as possible, and move on from there. So I agree with that aspect of it, and I love that. There's probably hundreds of thousands of people who've gone through his stuff now who have benefited greatly, and I'm not knocking him for that at all. I hate the idea of paying all cash for things. That drives me insane. But I work in finance, so I work in leverage.
Well,
constantly.
and you had the discipline.
Yeah, too. Right?
Exactly.
It's like you
Exactly.
develop that discipline. I mean, I was a young kid buying paintball guns I couldn't afford. Like that was, that's just what I did one day. I don't do that anymore. But there was a time. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, I have one last question for you.
Of course.
If you're going to buy something for fun,
Yeah.
do you tend to buy appreciating items for fun?
No. If I'm buying something for fun, it's for fun.
You're just gonna rock it.
Yeah. If I'm buying something that's I think is going to appreciate, that I'm buying an asset, and I'd look at those very differently than something that I'm buying for fun. Now, the problem is when it starts to get hazy, right? Like I'm buying that second house. Oh, but I'm going to rent it out. Like, are you though? Are you actually going to rent that thing out? Or is your wife going to say, I don't want anyone else sleeping in my bed, regardless of whether or not they change sheets?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's so you got to kind of know yourself. And for me, if I'm buying something for fun, I'm going to call it what it is. And yeah, I'm going to buy that because this sounds fun and I'm going to do it. My wife was making fun of me recently because I've gone through like 4 phone cases in the last month and a half because I buy them on Amazon and they come in and I'm like, this thing's stupid, I hate it. And I buy another phone case because it's like, for whatever reason, I'm a phone case snob. I had no idea. But, and so she said to me, she's like, just call it what it is. Like, you want a phone case and you're wasting money on it and you know it. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like,
Just let me see your phone case.
It's like it's the cheapest phone case I think I found too. It's the one I like the most. It's just like a black
sleeve.
black fake leather. It was like $12. But I went through the fancy brown leather ones with like the metal on the side. I went through the silicone and I was
That's
like,
the one
no.
I got right now.
Apparently I'm a phone case nut.
Mine is a fractured one right
Yeah.
now. A fractured one.
But yeah, so to round this out, I would say time, diversification, and then emergency fund, I think, are the prime ideas. And then discipline. If you can't have discipline, you can't invest, you can't save. It gets too difficult because there's always going to be that emotional urge to buy something fancy, to buy something cool, which I'm all for putting money aside to buy something cool. I think no matter what you do, you should have a fun account, right? Something where you can go spend that money guilt-free because you know that's what that money is there for. My wife and I have done the same thing where each month we used to literally have an account, and in the bank you can nickname accounts, right? And I called it Fun Account. And I'd put a little bit of money each paycheck in there, and I knew that any money that went in there, it was going to go towards something that added nothing to our life other than just pure joy. But it wasn't going to savings, it wasn't going to bills, and granted, if we were struggling, then we'd have to use money for something, but like that's the money that I think you set aside because it makes you who you are and like gives you purpose as a person so that you can go on those vacations. You can enjoy yourself a little bit and you're not this like robot that's like, no, I save and I work and this is what I do till the day I die. It's like, I don't think that's good for anybody. It's like a cheat day when you're working out. You got to have a little bit of fun in life. Otherwise it's pointless. So.
Okay, so I too went through Financial Peace University when I was in like high school or something. We did it at our church actually. And you're preaching basically the same thing as far as like the emergency fund thing. Mm-hmm. I have a little bit of an emergency fund, but I wouldn't say it's 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Mm-hmm. But like, you know, my car broke down a month ago and I was able to pay for it and not really worry about it. Mm-hmm. What kind of account do you recommend stashing that money in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I use Ally for mine, Ally Bank. And there's different online bank accounts you can use. But online banks, for whatever reason, and I'm sure there's a reason behind it if you ask someone who knows, but they usually have the higher interest rate savings accounts that you can use. Like I said, Ally, I think, is 3.75 right now. The Apple one's 4.1. Find a savings account you can use that if you need to draw on it, it's not going to penalize you. Don't use a CD because you can't take the money out. So if you have an emergency, it's literally worthless. Use a savings account that you're going to get the most interest for it and just leave it there. And that way you make some money on it and it grows slowly, even if you're not even using it.
Okay.
That's my thoughts on it.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, you guys stayed awake. I'm proud of you.
No, thank you.
I feel like I just gave a lecture at a university over
What
here.
was the last thing you said after time, diversification, emergency fund, and something else?
Discipline.
Discipline, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
You don't even know what you're saying thank you to. That is like drinking from a fire hydrant right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and
I'm just
and
writing down stuff.
I obviously, and like I work locally, so I have no problem. If anyone has any questions, I'm always a source. If you want to stop by and see me and get coffee, obviously for Kyle, it's my friend too, so I'll be more than happy to help any way I can and
Cool.
give advice that is not of Alcris Investments, but is of my own. And,
You guys, I hope you have picked up on the thread from what Trevor said the first week and what Glenn said last week to what Jeff is saying this week. The number one thing that men need to work on is discipline.
100%.
Is discipline. In all the different areas that we've talked about, it all boils down to you have to grow in your discipline. You have to make a decision. I am going to become a better man than the man I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But when you do it, down the road, you see the fruit of it. You probably won't see the fruit of discipline tomorrow. Okay? But when you look back 5 years from now or 10 years from now, you will see, wow, look how far I've come in 10 years.
Right.
And you are setting those patterns in place for the decades after that.
Mm-hmm.
Take it from someone who's 63.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, it links back into time too, right? I mean, if you
Yeah.
figure out discipline now, I mean, you basically have longer to figure yourself out and to be better as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, discipline itself, it's funny. It's looked at as like this anomaly, this thing that you're like, oh, if only I had discipline, right? And the problem is, I mean, you don't need discipline throughout your life on everything. Like, focus on what is important to you. Try and have discipline in that aspect. The more you have in your life, great, the better you are. But you're not going to be perfect, and the more you figure that out, and the faster you figure it out, the more you're going to realize that you can't control everything, and as long as you can control certain things, that's what's going to give you the ability to get better. But I mean, people look at it as like a superpower. I mean, if people see people walking the street like, oh man, look at that guy in his like nice car, or look at that guy who's like shredded. It's really discipline when it comes to discipline, whether it's fitness or discipline, whether it's finances in the business, whatever it is. But it's something that literally anyone could have to have those those steps to get better at something. It's just a matter of making the change and figuring it out and kind of putting the pieces in place and making sure you have the structure. And that's why I say go into one of those go into your bank, go meet one of the bankers. I want to open an account. Meet them, like say hi, and like ask them questions. There's literally nothing wrong with you walking in the Chase and saying I want to open a brokerage account, and they'll literally answer anything you want. So it's having those conversations, taking that first step. I think is the most important piece.
That's good.
And then just reading a couple books and great, you're good to go.
Very good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Well, Jeff, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing your wisdom. Really That was incredible. Let me pray for you guys so we can get out of here.
Let's do it.
Father, I'm grateful for this group of men who are choosing to prioritize discipline in their life. And now I pray that you put your hand on it. I pray that you'd multiply our efforts and bless them. God, give us wisdom where we need it. Give us strength where we need it. I also pray that you would bless Jeff and his family. God, go before him and continue to bless his family, bless his work. Keep your hand on him and over him. Be with us now as we leave. We love you. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Cool.